Hey everyone, welcome. We are going to talk about the Novation Circuit tonight, basically a quick tutorial on how to use it. Right now I'll give you a quick overview. On the back there's stereo output, left and right, MIDI in and out, and connected right now to DC power. There's also a USB jack here. You use the USB to connect it to your computer. When you connect it to your computer, you can configure the patches on here, and also you can update your firmware. So if you have not updated your firmware, this tutorial is running 1.8. So if you're watching it and you're noticing you can't do some things that I'm showing you here, and you haven't upgraded yet, you probably need to upgrade your firmware. So go ahead and do that, maybe before you even watch more. I'll put a link below of the site to go to do that. Okay, beyond that, master volume up here, the headphone jack down here, sorry, and these 8 knobs, we call them the macro knobs, and we have a filter as well, which can be used. Just a quick filter effect. It's good for outros, I find. Anyway, before we get any deeper, we'll go through everything else later. Let's go into sessions. So the way this sucker is built is it allows you to have 32 sessions at any time. What's the difference between the light colors? These ones that are in dull blue came, they're the preset sessions. We can go ahead and try them out. You just touch it and push play. Now they're going to sound a little weird because I've changed all these synth patches. And the ones I've lit up below are just my sessions. So when you save a session, so this was an empty one that I was going to save for, and the ones that aren't lit up are empty ones too. So when you go ahead in here and hit save, you can twist this knob right up here, and we'll twist it to a bright green. And now, hey, that's a quick way that you can remember, oh, hey, this is something that I did, or at least differentiates from, you can write over all these presets too, but then you can say, oh, yeah, it just gives you a way to remember which sessions were what, beyond them all being the same color and you losing track of them over time. I'll probably still lose track of them, but at least it gives me a better chance. Anyways, let's go into this one. We save green, it should be empty, and we'll go into the patterns. Okay, so now we are looking at the pattern screen. So we have selected a session that we're going to use to build our tutorial pattern, and within the pattern screen you can see we have 4 different sequencers. The purple one, which is for synthesizer number 1, the green one, which is for synthesizer number 2, this orange one, which is for drum parts 1 and 2, and this yellow one, which is for drum parts 3 and 4. Cool. So we'll get into more about what these glowing squares mean versus the dim ones. We'll get into that in a little bit. First, where I want to start off with is drums. So if you want to get into an instrument, you just quickly tap it up here. I can go to drums 3 and 4 here, drums 1 and 2 here. If I want to get into the synthesizers, which I will later, I just tap them up here. But we're going to start with drums. All right. First things first, we are going to go into the drum parts. So this thing can hold up to 64 different samples. So what I've done is I've ditched the pre-built samples and I've loaded in 2 drum machines, the Drumulator and I think the LM1, just a clean. So there's half of my samples are taken up by drum machines, and if I hit the octave up, so I can switch between for each of these instrument parts. You can see if octave down is lit up. That's all my drum machines. And if I hit octave up, I've got a couple of synthesizer samples and just a regular piano. So let's find a good kick drum for drum 1. So let's go back, hold down shift, drum run. So these are my kicks. Alright, let's go with that. Cool. And then these macro dials up here. what they'll do is they'll adjust the sound. So let's go ahead and, so here I got the sequencer. Drum 1 is these first 2 rows. So quick simple beat. Now if I go up here, I can adjust kind of the pitch. So you can see, you can pick a sample and then you can tweak it with these macro dials up here. Cool. So let's go into drum 2. So I'm gonna just push stop for a second. So that's one quick way of basically putting down something on the sequencer. Now there's a whole different way of recording too. So if I go back into drum 2, hold down shift and drum 2 and back where I'm here, clicking around in the drum machine. You can also live record with these too. So if you want more than one drum sound per drum part, it's possible to do, because you might be thinking, oh, you can only do 4 different sample parts. That's pretty limited. No, you can work around that a bit, and I'll show you how here. So let's go ahead and push play on our simple kick. Try to find something good that goes with it. Alright, good enough. So we got that going with it. Let's add something else on top of it. Don't want to do the same work. So you can see, I got 2 drum sounds to 1 drum part. Now, of course, if I try to put more on top of that, it's going to start to get chopped up pretty quick. Like you can't have more than 1 sample playing at a time. Now, the other way to record, so I've showed you how to record with just chopping into the sequencer like this to add drum hits. And you can do that over top of the ones that you recorded the other way too. So you can do a mixture of both. And what else you can do is you can go into here, and let's just see what we got for drum 3 and 4. What I can do is hold down shift and note, and this is just another way to quickly play your drum parts. And say, I kind of screwed that up, don't like that. And just go back into the patterns menu here, hold down clear, touch that one that I did for drums 3 and 4, and it's gone. So I can go back in here again and go. And there we go. There's our drum parts. So that was kind of like drums 101. Just knowing that will give you more than enough to get in there and start making your own drum loops. But let's look at some of the extra options around drum notes. So let's go ahead and hit play, see what we ended up with. Cool. So what I'm going to do is go into the mixer, because right now you can hit the mixer here, and I'm going to mute drums 2, 3, and 4. Why am I doing that? So I can do a better demo of some of these advanced features using just a kick drum. So let's go back to our patterns and hit play. Just going to hear that kick drum now. Okay. So let's go into drum 1. Let's go ahead and hit velocity. Now velocity is shown down here. So right now it is the same for each drum hit. Now think of velocity of how hard you're hitting the drum. Now these pads are velocity sensitive, so if you're manually hammering in notes, it's going to register a value depending on how hard you hit the pad. But you may or may not want that. If you're putting in just by the pad through the sequencer, it's going to just be a standardized value. In this case it seems to be 12. So let's say you want to change that. Let's make this kind of half. Let's turn this one down to turn this one up to full. Now let's make these as low a volume as possible. Now instead of having to click into or touch each of these, what you can do is there's a duplicate button up here. So I can duplicate that and say make this one the same as that one. And then if I want to make all these the same, I can hit duplicate again, touch this one, and then touch all of these. And now if I go into each note, they're all going to be just like how I copied and pasted them. So let's hear what that sounds like. Max velocity one's here, lowest velocity one's these three together. Quite a difference, eh? So let's try to make something a little better sounding on that. So you might want to do a little bit of a build here. So it's a little bit more of a rhythm to it. So that's the velocity. Under gate, you can actually add mini steps. So you can see how down below here for each. So it adds in to this one square, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different drum hits. See? Now, doesn't sound great, but maybe you want something like a little. Don't exactly love that either. But also, beyond putting rapid ones, you can adjust the timing slightly too. Might not want that, but you have that option. Same for any of these. Go into them. Not great, but hey, there is your micro steps for your drums. So let's, now that we've fixed the velocity, let's go back to our mixer, turn on our other drum parts, and see what that sounds like. Cool, eh? Okay, final thing on drums. Let's talk about modifying drum patterns. Let's push play. Here is our typical pattern. What we can do is we can go and nudge. And what nudge lets us do is you can select the drum part and you can move the pattern around. See how it's shifting the notes in the sequence around? You can move them left and right. And you can go into each of the drum parts. So this is kind of fun because you might get something down that you like, and then maybe you want to play in here to see if you can play around with the nudging it around to see, because you can sound. That sounds, the original sounds completely different than this. Sounds all wrong. And then you can also go on the other drum parts. So that doesn't sound too bad. See, that's kind of a nice effect. So let's say, hell, let's go for it. Let's go back to our patterns here. Now you can see, right, I have to manually switch it back and forth. Let's go ahead and add another cube. And so what's going to happen now, let's just hit play. See how our extra effects stopped going? Well, why is that, you're saying? Well, because we've only recorded a sequence into this one cube. So if I click this cube and I go patterns, or pardon me, I go notes, you can see, hey, we recorded some notes into this. Now let's go back to our patterns and let's select this cube. Let's hit play. There's nothing in there. So what do? Let's go back to our pattern. Let's click, duplicate this guy, and say, put him into there. And now there we go. We got both of those guys ready. Why isn't it playing there? Well, I gotta tell it to. I gotta tell it to play this one and this one. And now watch this. Let's go back into our nudge. There you go. Now I don't have to move it back and forth like an idiot anymore. Let the machine do it for me. So that's nudge. What about length? I can adjust the length of these. That's for both of them. Sorry, they both have their own. So you can control the length of each of these patterns or cubes in the sequence. Okay, so that is nudge and length. So beyond those two things, there's another really cool way to modify drums. Let's go ahead and go back into our notes. We just have drum 1 activated. So let's go ahead and play. I'm going to hold down shift and hit drum 1, which takes us to our drum parts, or our sample parts. Right now we're in our drum samples. And you can see I can switch it on the fly, but if I hit record and I hold shift, I can do pattern shifting, I think it's called. And this lets you kind of modify a pattern. It's going to keep the same steps, but you can change the drums throughout it. So you can see, it's kind of cool if you're doing a live performance, you can switch up a pattern pretty quickly that way and not mess it up too badly. Or you can kind of stumble into happy accidents. Let's see if we keep it playing with it a bit more. It looks a little bit better than that. Tutorial, you get the feeling for it. Sometimes it works better than other times. Let's add everything else back in and see what it sounds like. Kind of lost it, eh? So if you ever lose it like that, you can go into the pattern and I can just clear it. So hold down clear. Now drum 1 and 2 are gone, so we can easily add them back in. Cool. And that about covers it for drums. So let's take a look at the synths. Okay, so now that we've gone over how the drums work, let's take a look at the synthesizers. So before we start playing around with synthesizers, let's just go into the mixers. We'll disable drum parts 2, 3, and 4. We'll mute them. So if we push play, we're only going to get the kick drum. So I mute it, you don't get a kick drum. If I unmute it, you get the kick drum. Okay, so synthesizer 1 and synthesizer 2 are here, and they are exactly the same. It's just you have 2 different synthesizers that you can use at the same time on this box with their own sequencers and patterns. So let's go into synth 1. I'm in synth 1 right now. The top 2 rows here are the keyboard. And down below here is the sequencer that's going to show what notes I have recorded in the pattern. You don't see anything right now because I haven't recorded any notes yet. Now, if you want a bigger keyboard, you can hold down Shift and hit Note, and the sequencer goes away. But you can use the whole pad area as a playing surface. Now, if you want that to go away, you just hit Note, and then it's gone. Now, if you want to record on to the sequence, there's 2 ways of doing that. You can either do a live record by just hitting play and record, see, as I hit notes, it's going to record them down into the sequencer. Now that isn't great, so if I want to get rid of that, there's two ways of doing it. I can touch these. Actually, I can just go clear and touch them, and that will get rid of them. But if I don't want to do all that, if I want to throw away the whole pattern, I can just go to the pattern screen, hold down clear, touch the pattern that I want to clear, go in here, it's empty. Alright, so that's how synthesizer recording works, either live recording, or you can go down into each, hold down one of these patterns. So you can hold down on the sequencer where you want to add in a note, and then add as many notes as you want to that block. So either live play, or go ahead and hold these down and tap in whatever you want. Pretty simple. Okay, there you can get a little bit more in depth of that. Let's clear this out again. Go patterns, like I just showed you, hold down clear, touch the pattern that you were currently in, go back in, empty. So let's just put something simple down. Oh, helps if I hit record. Simple. Now a couple things I haven't shown you so far is the tempo. So I've been playing at the same tempo for the whole time. If I hit tempo up here, adjust it by twisting macro knob on here, and you can see on the screen it's at 100 beats per minute. You can set it all the way down to 40, very slow, or speed it all the way up to, I think it's 240, yeah, 240. So let's set it back to 120. It was 140 before. That sounds about right. Beyond the tempo, there is swing. So swing just kind of mixes it up a little bit. See if I crank it up. Kind of makes the timing a little weird. Shuffles it around a little bit. Or I can turn it all the way down to 20. And it's very hard on the nose. Or you can give it a little bit of swing and have it kind of swaying back and forth a little bit, not right on the nose. I've always personally, as you probably can tell by that awful description, I find it hard to describe swing. It's more of a natural feeling, and it kind of differs from device to device. To me, it's more, like I said, hard on the nose when you drop it all the way down to 20, like it's going to be very, and as you crank it up more, it seems to let it loose a little bit more. So we'll just set it back. I think it was at 40. So those are two other ways you can adjust the tempo and the swing right there through these buttons up here. Anyway, back to Synth 1 and our one pattern we got going on here. Very simple. So let's stop that for a sec. Let's go to the velocity. So just like drums, velocity is how hard basically you're hitting that keyboard down for the notes. So let's set this to 1, and let's set this other guy's to max. And so let's see here. Let's just hear the difference. Not much. So one thing you got to keep in mind is depending on the patch, it may react differently to velocity. And this specific patch doesn't seem to have, the velocity doesn't seem to have any effect. Now that could be due to maybe one of these macros will increase the velocity. So let's see if that's what's happening. That's not having any effect on it at all. 2 is not having any effect on the velocity at all. It's having an effect on the sound, but not the velocity. This one should sound very quiet, and these other 2 should sound very loud. 3, no. What about 4? Nope. 5 is negative. 6 is negative. Running out of chances here. 8's my final hope. So none of those macros had a difference. So I'm going to say that this specific patch, velocity has no impact. So you're going, what the hell does velocity do? So let's keep this playing. Well, I'll push pause for a second. What I'm going to do now is we're going to switch the patch. So synth 1, I'm holding down shift, I am pushing synth 1, and this is bringing me in the patch view. So I'm going to push play again so you can hear the pattern. Actually, 1, sorry. What I want to show you is basically there were 64 different patterns. Now these are all different mostly than the preset ones. What I've done is I'll link below. There's a cool site you can go to and hook in your circuit via USB to your computer, plug it into a browser that's MIDI capable, and you can preview patches off this website, and if you like them, download them directly to your circuit, and I'll put a link, like I said, in the description below for that site. It's really cool. There's tons of patches there and a lot of cool sounding ones. Anyway, what I want to show you is how that velocity works. So let's see if we can find a patch that reacts to that velocity. Alright, this sounds better. Let's go back here. Nope. Oh yeah. So let's add a couple more notes. So remember, if you want to add notes, you can either live play or you can... Alright, so let's build the velocity up as we go through these notes. I'll get rid of the other ones. So really quiet. So it should go from really quiet here to really loud there. And then we'll add a bunch down below. We'll do a really big build up down below. So we'll start really low. So you can see how it gets louder, because it's almost like somebody lightly pushing and then hammering harder and harder as it goes along. So some patches naturally will respond to velocity. Some will have a macro that will adjust how much the velocity impacts them, and some flat out the velocity will do nothing. So like if you're like me and you go to that site and you just grab a bunch of random patches that you think sound cool, you're going to be flying blind a little bit, and you're just going to have to experiment and remember which ones do and which ones don't. What else you can do is if you plug your circuit into your computer and use the Novation tool that will come when you upgrade your firmware, its kind of plug-in client has a patch builder within it, and within that patch builder you can create patches. There's almost too many options, and what I'll do is also there's a good Cuckoo video where he goes through not the Novation Circuit patch builder but a third-party patch builder, but that third-party one is almost identical to the new Novation one. You can watch that and he'll teach you how to build patches. I haven't done it yet, so I'm not going to go through that with you, but through that patch building process you can say, hey, this macro does this macro does that, this macro does this. So you can either set one of these macros to indicate how velocity impacts the sound, or you naturally through the patch, I believe, I'm going with an assumption here, that you could, through how you build the patch, you can say, you know, velocity, depending the velocity, how high it's set will adjust the sound this way. Okay, so that's enough about velocity. Let's take a look at the gate. So let's go ahead and go back to our patterns here, clear out what we have in here, and let's pick a bit of a better patch. That's just a little too crazy for a demo. I just want something a little more plain. So you can see one of the nice things through the patch preview screen is, like, looking at this, you're going to have no clue what any of these patches are. If you touch them, it's going to be preview. And then if you want to go to the other page, you can, just like switching through the samples or the drums, you can switch the patch samples by going either octave up or octave down. Let's go with that. Okay. So let's just record something quick here. Cool, good enough. Okay, so velocity. Let's hold down shift. Okay, never mind. Gate. There's a couple hidden things sometimes when you hold down shift. So let's make sure. Nope, it's under gate. Ignore that. Okay, gate. So what is gate? Gate, think of it as how long kind of the key is pushed down for. So perfect example is I'm going to set the gate to this to be minimal, and it's going to be a quick like loop, like hardly anything. And I'll set this one to be maximum, and it's going to be like you're holding down that note. So let's see what that sounds like. So minimum, max. So see how this one's fully out? Basically it's saying, hey, this one I'm holding down the whole way, and this one I'm just lightly So if I hold it down a little bit longer, it's going to be like held down probably till about there. So let's see how that sounds like now. See, it drops out right there. And this one's just going to keep going and going and going. Okay, so pretty easy. Basically, touch on the note you want, set how long you want it held down for, and you're good to go. Very simple. Now we're going to go one step further here. So I'm going to set both of these to the lowest setting possible. So what happens if I click or touch this and I hold down shift? You're going, what the hell is this? Okay. One. So on the sequencer, remember how the drums I showed you the micro steps? You can do micro steps for the synths as well. So if I touch here and I hold shift, nothing comes up. Why? Well, there's no note there. But if I touch here and hold shift, I get one purple square here. I get a bunch of weird squares I can push here, and I get an orange square. So before we talk about anything else, let's talk about these. So within this one square in the synth, and pardon me, not the synth, in the sequence, there is 6 mini steps. So if I adjust it here, it's going to play at the very last mini step of this step. So how does that sound? Let's see. See how it's almost onto that one? So let's go ahead and put it, back to the start and see what it sounds like. Not the best demo. So let's go ahead and go back to our notes here. Click on this guy and let's add in a bunch of other notes. Okay, so there's a chord kind of going on there now. Now let's go back to the gate. Let's see how it sounds like now. All right. Let's hold down shift now. You're going, what the heck? There's 6 purple squares now. What does that mean? Let's touch a purple square. It's all those 6 notes that we've assigned to this one step in the sequencer. Now, what can you do now? You can put each of these 6 notes on a step here. So if you want them all on, right, so if I touch one, they're all lit up to step 1 there. So that basically what you're hearing is the chord quickly on step 1. So let's hear that again. You can hear them all go off at the same time, right? What if you want to do a quick little like whoop? Let's show you how to do that. Hold down shift, note 1, boom. Note 2, let's put it on micro step 2. Note 3, micro step 3. Note 4, micro step 4. Note 5, micro step 5. Note 6, micro step 6. Let's hear what that sounds like now. See? Okay, so 1, that lets you do way more within just a basic 16 steps of one pattern. Basically, each of these steps now has 6 steps within. Now, when the tempo's set to 140, you may be able to find a way to make that work. What I think might be interesting is if you use this and you use the drum micro steps, instead of having 16 steps, and let's take the tempo down way to 40. Let's hear what that sounds like on 40. See, you can, I'd have to set it up with the drums too, like a drum on every step of micro steps, but you could really take these 16 pattern sequences and make them, you know, 6 times as long. If you crank the tempo down, drop the tempo down to 40 and program a whole bunch of micro steps, there's a lot of room for doing some funky stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and bring the tempo back up. We'll put it to 140. And push play again. So there you go. So just to go over all that again, you go into the gate mode, you go into the note, or pardon me, you go into the cube of the sequence, you hold down shift. Purple are the notes that are assigned to this square in the sequence, and these cubes above are for that note, which mini step of that square in the pattern that note is going to play on. So you're going, what the hell is this orange thing? Well, this orange thing is for drone notes. So let's go ahead and clear this out. So a drone kind of note is a sound you want to continuously go over and over and over again and give you a little bit of background to your sound. So let's see if we can find a good example of that. It might not work under this patch, so 1 second. I'm going to go back into our patterns here and clear it out. And let's just record something like that. Oh wait, perfect. So you hear how it's like chopping right when it hits it? Not the best drone note sound. So you're going, Nick, how do you fix that? I'll show you. Go into gate. Touch that. So you can see the gate's full. You're like, well, how do I make that a drone note? Hold down shift. Push this orange guy. Let's hear the difference now. See, it doesn't chop off. It just keeps going. So if you want a drone note that is, so let's, just to make an example, let's go back here, hold down, turn off the drone note, and let's hear what it sounds like. See, it's a hard chop when it hits. So if you want to get rid of that hard chop, and you want it just to drone on and on and on and on, hit that orange button. And there you go. So what have we covered? Just to review. We've covered how to play notes, how to get in the synthesizer 1, the keyboard, the sequencer underneath. If you want the full keyboard to play with, hold down shift and hit note. If you want to turn it off, just hit note again. We've looked at what the velocity does. That velocity doesn't impact necessarily every patch, so if you're playing around with the velocity and you're not noticing a difference, the patch you're using may not be enable velocity, or one of these macros will adjust to how velocity reacts to the patch. And really the most interesting menu is the gate menu, because under the gate menu, if you hold down, you can just do a basic gate like this. And then here, one thing I will show you also is, let's say you have that drone note on, but you don't have the gate set to be maximized. It's not going to do anything. So so you're going, hey, Nick, I want to hit shift to turn the orange button on, and it's not being a drone note. Well, the gate has to be maximized to take up the whole loop. Otherwise, it's going to override that orange option saying, hey, enable this as a drone note. So we covered drone notes, we covered mini steps, and we covered what that purple indicator is. That's how many notes are currently assigned to that step and how to assign them to mini steps underneath that step. So what's left? We didn't cover nudge and length. So I won't bother because they work exactly the same as they work under the drum. So you can take your synth patterns and you can nudge them around, and also you can adjust the length of your synth patterns exactly the same as you can for your drum patterns. There's no difference between the two there. Only other things we didn't cover is under the note you're going, hey, I wanna play a higher octave than that. Well, just hit the octave up button. And it's going to shift those rows up, and same thing for octave down. So it just shifts everything down or shifts everything up an octave. Pretty easy. Okay, so that about covers it for synths, and synth 2 is exactly the same thing. The only other thing under synths that we should probably look at is sidechain. So what is sidechain? Right now it is off. So sidechain is going to react to the pattern you set on drum 1. So let's push play. So it's off right now. So when I enable a sidechain, that kick drum is going to impact how Synth 1 sounds. And depending on how, like just the same as velocity, depending on how the patch is set up and depending on what sidechain, so all these are different versions of the sidechain, they're going to make the sidechain sound different. It's going to give you a different sound. So experiment on your own, but let's do a quick sample. So you can see it's kind of dimming it off when the kick's coming in. And it seems as I go up, it's making, at least for this patch, if I go up, it's making that sidechain more impactful. So where you can barely hear the synth at all, to down here where it hardly has no effect, to completely off. So it's one more way to kind of merge your synth of your drum and adjust your sound. Okay, so that's about it for synths, and synth 2 is exactly the same. So you can go into synth 2, pick a sound, okay, so I think at this point we've covered the drums, we've done a rough patch over the synth, and at this point you could whip this thing out and start playing on your own. Alright, awesome. I'm happy. So basically we've covered how the drum samples work, we've covered how the synthesizers work. So what I'm going to do now is get into the mixer and how the FX work. And before I do that, I'm just going to try to make something a little better than what I got right now. So I'm going to go ahead and clear synth 1. And let's do that. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hold down this guy here and hold down this guy here. Now what that does is instead of just playing into one pattern for synth 8, I've now unlocked all 8 patterns. So if I push play, let's go ahead in our mixer here and let's enable other drum parts too. So what you can see now, this is going to flow through 8 patterns. So that gives me a lot more room to record something for synth 1, and I'm going to do the same thing for synth 2. Now this is very basic for how the patterns work. So let's go ahead, do that for both of the synth 1 and synth 2, and I'm just going to line them up so they're both playing in the same chunks at the same time. I'll show you a bit more on patterns later, but that's just another little tidbit there. And what we're going to do now is record something a little bit better for synth 1 and synth 2, just so I can show you a bit better example how the mixer and FX works. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's find a nice patch that goes well with this. I'm not going to take too much time here. And I'm just going to live record something over this. Good enough. One other thing I forgot to show you with synthesizer is there's the scale option. So let's go ahead and record on. And under the scales, you can quickly change how basically the keyboard is laid out scale. Up here you can change the scale, which is also you can record these changes on the fly or play around with it and adjust the scale. Does it sound great? Oh god, it's going bad. See, it drastically changes the sound. And down here is the root note of the scale. But let's just go back to what we had initially because it's 7, all sorts of bad. Let's just try to do it. So, bear with me. So let's clear out all these patterns. Now let's start again. Right, here we go. trying to switch between the patches, like, hey, I can't hear anything. Well, when you're in record mode, it's going to disable the preview, so it doesn't record that preview sound over what you're doing. So I got to turn record off. So I was stupid and I forgot to turn record off when I was switching between patches, so that's off now. Now I'm going to layer the patch over top of it. And that's kind of nice because I can hear what it sounds like over synth one effects, and that works well with it. Good enough. And you can record over top of you, also record and kind of layer like this. Good enough, eh? And then if you also want to play over top of it, you can turn record off, crank the octave up. Oh, that's too much too hard. Alright, cool. So what have we done? Let's go back to our patterns. So we've now taken synth 1, synth 2, and we filled up the full sequencer full of patterns. So let's go ahead and push play, and we're going to go into let's go into FX first. So let's go FX. Now I'm going to push stop over that crap while I explain what's going on here. Sorry, my dog wants a pet. Okay, so what are we looking at here? Up here, all these boxes are different types of delay. And these green ones down here are reverb. And this is turning FX on and off. So if you want to quickly turn off FX and you don't want to go in and dial everything down and switch everything off, this is your quick oh crap button to turn it on or off, or to apply a quick FX effect if you're performing live. So let's go ahead. So you're like, okay, well, you got a delay enabled there and you got a reverb enabled there. Let's hear how it sounds. Nothing, right? Well, that's where these macro dials come in handy. So it gets a little weird here because you're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Where you're like, well, 1 must respond to synth 1, 2 must respond to synth 2, 3 must go to drum 1. No. You get used to this once you start playing around with it. It intuitively makes sense, but at first it doesn't. So 1 is going to apply effects to synth 1. 3 is going to apply effects to synth 2. 5 is going to apply effects to drum 1. 7, drum 2. 6, drum 3. 8, drum 4. 2 and 4, nothing. Okay. So to demonstrate this, I'm going to go to the mixer quick, and I'm going to disable everything except synth 1 and push play. So all you're hearing now is synth 1 going off. So let's go back to FX. And let's give it some delay. So I touch the delay, and now I crank up 1. And you can see as I crank the dial up, the delay gets more impactful, and this light gets brighter. So that's your indication. How bright the light is how much delay you're applying to it. Now these aren't a level of delay, they're different types of delay. So you have 16 types of delay. Now let's try reverb. So if I touch this reverb pad, notice the light goes off. And let's turn delay off. And you notice that's one thing. If you're doing this when it's pushing play, if it's cranked and you're switching to delays, you're going to get weird effects. So if it sounds really weird, give it a second to settle. So let's turn the delay off. So it's off now. Let's see what the reverb sounds like. Let's crank it all the way up. So you can really change how it sounds. So let's just add that, add some delay. And let's go back to the mixer and turn everything else on. So another key, I've added delay, I've added reverb, but only to Synth 1. Now let's say, hey, I want to go into Synth 2 and add reverb and delay, or pardon me, delay and reverb. I can do that, but I can't assign different types of delay and different type of reverbs to different parts. They're all going to be stuck to these same types, but I can change. So if I go here for Synth 2, so let's go ahead. I'm going to go back to the mixer just to completely demonstrate this. I'm going to push play in a second once I turn off. So Synth 2 is going to play natural. So let's go ahead and touch the delay here, and I can add delay to that if I want. And same for reverb. Let's go ahead and add everything else back in. So you can hear my synths now have delay and reverb on, but my drums have none. So let's just go to the kick drum, go back to our FX. Drum 1, oops, sorry, FX, touch the delay, let's see what, so you can see I've added delay now to the kick drum, and I can add reverb to it too if I want, and I can do it, and you can go along, so I can do it, I won't go through each part, but that's basically how the FX work, so let's add everything back in. So the FX are cool, but they're limited in a way because you can only pick one delay for all your parts. You can't have different delay types for different parts, and you can't have different reverb types for different parts. It's universal for all parts, but you can have various levels or none applied at all via these macros. So just a quick recap, hit FX, pick the delay type you like, pick the reverb type you like, and then if you want to apply reverb, touch the reverb you want and dial the knobs up to, and then if you dial one, like it's like, oh, I want to put, that's the nice thing is if you try to think Synth 2 applies to 2 and you start twisting 2, the light doesn't light up. So at least you have that kind of tactile, it's not tactile, visual feedback to tell you if the knob's doing anything or not. But and then you touch the reverb you want and you can apply it to whatever you want, and then you go, everything's on. Now, let's take a look at the mixer. So we've taken a look briefly at it, how to drop mute parts completely on and off. But you can also adjust. So the synths are a little loud. So just like I showed you for the FX, knob 1 goes to Synth 1, 3 to 2, and vice versa. And the nice thing is they're color-coded the color to the synth. So purple matches purple, green mean, and the two drum parts orange, and the other 2, 3, and 4 are yellow. So let's go ahead and drop our synths down. So now the drums are a little bit more impactful. And then you can play around the filter a bit too. Filter can be used anywhere, not only in the mixer. So if you're playing around with patterns or whatnot, it's the same thing. It's universal. Right, back to the mixer. So at the very basic level, the mixer lets you mute, unmute, and quickly adjust the volume for specific parts. Now you're saying, hey, there's an octave option here. What happens if I push octave up? I'm going to push octave up here, and let's push play. Alright, so you're saying, what the heck does this do? Well, everything's blue. You can pan things left to right. So if I want my synths to go off the left channel here, let's crank them all the way left, they turn right blue. See, you can hear now in your speakers, or using headphones or stereo equipment, all these synths are going off the left channel. Going back. Now they're coming out the right channel. So you're going, why on earth would I want to do this? Well, for one cool trick that I found is, yes, you have onboard FX in the circuit itself, which is awesome. But one, they're universal. There's only delay and there's only reverb. Sorry, my dog wants attention here. Hey, I'm almost done. Almost done. I'll be right there. Okay, let me finish this up quick. All right. I'm gonna have to do a quick cut here. Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. Dog just had to have a pee, and she comes before these silly internet videos. So what I did just before I turned this on is I cranked all the synths to the left ear, which you can see because they're blue, and all the drum parts are now cranked to the right ear because they're in red. And you can see you can adjust even the level it's cranked. When they're fully red, they're fully cranked to the right ear, and when they're fully blue, they're fully cranked to the left ear. Left stereo. Why would you want to do this? Well, maybe for your music you're trying to do something psychedelic, or one sound's coming out of the left ear and the other sound's coming out of the right, doing some Pink Floyd shit. I don't know. What I like to do this for is if you're using stereo outputs, I can hook the left output. Sorry, I hit my microphone. I can hook the left output into a pedal or a series of pedals that I want just the synths to go through, and then maybe the right output for the drums I want to go through clean or put through something like a bit crush. So it lets you separate the effects per part. So if you want one of the synths to have an effect applied to it, crank it to the left, put it to a pedal through the left output and hook it up to your mixer mono, and then that synth will have an effect just to it. And if everything else is set to the right, you can either plug that through other effects or cleanly into your mixer. It's a way, so yes, it does have onboard effects, but it only has delay and reverb. If you want other effects, or if you want pedals that you can quickly adjust on the side, don't have to menu dive, it's handy for that. And at least that's how I found the panning option for this handy. Awesome. So we have almost covered everything for this sucker here. Just a quick recap. How it works is there's 32 sessions. Each of those sessions has its own 4 kind of sequencers, two different sequencers for 2 different synths, and 2 different sequencers for basically 4 different sample parts. Beyond that, up here, you can control the tempo, you can control the swing, you have your clear button, you have your copy and paste duplicate button. What I'll show you quick is, like, say if you really like this session, you can go back to your sessions page, hit save, bang. Now whatever I've done here, I can go into one of these demo or sessions that came with the box. Cool, eh? Okay, and then when you're in a session, you have per part up to 8 patterns, and you can see I've recorded into 8 patterns for synth 1, recorded into 8 patterns for synth 2, and the drums I've only recorded into 1 pattern for each at this point in time. Earlier I recorded into pattern 1 and 2 for drums 3 and 4. I took a break between doing the drums and the synths, and I forgot to save the second pattern for drum 3 and 4. That's why you don't see it now. We covered the note screen, which is a little bit different between drums and synths. Velocity and gate are relatively similar. Just remember, for synths, you have the drone note option, and for the micro steps, you can assign different notes to different micro steps. The nudge and length work the same between the synths and the drums. That doesn't adjust the notes, it adjusts the patterns, so you can move. Let's just take a quick look here. Match the patterns around, or you can adjust the lengths of the patterns. Okay, and then we also covered the mixer options, basically how to mute and unmute things, and how to pan left and right through these menus, and also how to adjust the overall volume of the different parts, and the FX, how to pick between the different delays, how to pick between the different reverbs, and how to assign them to the different parts through the macro knobs. Alright, enough of a recap. What I wanted to show you is under patterns. So let's say you want in pattern 1 and 8 to play. So you'd click on 1 or touch 1 and you touch 8. You go, oh crap, it's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now before, I can't remember if it was patch 1.7 or 1.8, you were tied to only, you could pick between 1 or 1 and 2 or 3 and 4, basically touch where you wanted to start and touch where you wanted to end. And you were stuck basically between that. So if you were making a song, maybe you'd have one part these 4, and then if you wanted to shift to another part of the song, you touch those, which was handy and workable and good enough. But thankfully, with one of those patches, I have to check the patch notes again, but it doesn't really matter, because if you're not upgraded, you're going to go into your firmware and upgrade them all anyways. Basically, you're going to say upgrade firmware, it's going to put you on the latest, and it's going to give you this option. And what this option is instead of being tied down to only being, be able to stuck between picking patterns that are next to each other, what you can do now is, let's go ahead and I'm going to just mute everything except the kick drum. Actually, let's just jump into a whole brand new session. And what we're going to do is just do a stupid kick drum here. Alright, so let's take that, let's go our patterns, and remember, if we want to copy and paste, we hold down duplicate, touch what we want to copy, and then touch into whatever square we want to paste it in. And this works for notes, it works for patterns, it's kind of a universal thing. So if I go this to here, all these patterns are going to be the same. And why I did that is I'm just going to dive into each pattern and adjust them slightly. And pattern, and just to make this demo, it's not going to sound good, but to make sense, I should have done this differently, but whatever. Basically, each pattern, so pattern 1 is going to have 1 kick drum, pattern 2 is going to have 2 kick drums, 3 is going to have 3, and so on and so on. So let's do that. So I shouldn't have copied and pasted everything, because I'm doing this as we go through here and I change my mind. So just give me 1 second to code that in. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and number 8. Okay, let's hear how that sounds, and let's just watch it. So what I'm going to do to begin with is select all 8 and let it flow through and see how it sounds. So you can see per pattern, 1 beats 1, 2 beats twice, and you got it. Okay, so you're saying, okay, so if I want to make my song where I have pattern 5 go 5 times and then pattern 1 go once, well, how do I do that when I can only, go from 1 to 2, or, I can quickly let that run 5 times and quickly jump to 1? Well, thankfully, you don't have to do that garbage anymore. What you can do is, when you're in pattern view, let's say you want 5 to play 5 times, 1 to play once, and then 8 to play twice. You hold down shift. And then watch carefully up here. As I touch cubes up here, these macros are going to light up. So let's go ahead and touch 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. So 1, 2, see now 2 is lit up, 3 is lit up, 4, 5, and then I want pattern 1 to play once, bang, and then I want pattern 8 to play on 7 and 8. Cool. So let's hit play. Let's see what happens. Watch up here, not down here. I can now sequence the patterns just like that, so they're not tied, basically having to flow through here over and over again. They're tied to how I've coded them up here. So that's awesome, because now I can basically, instead of having to jump around in my hands while it's going, I can code the machine to do that for me. And if you are trying to do this, like I said earlier, on your circuit, and you're going, hey Nick, this isn't working, you probably haven't upgraded your firmware. So go ahead and check below where I've provided the link and plug your circuit in via the USB cable and upgrade your damn firmware, and you'll be good to go. Honestly, guys, I could probably go on for this for another half an hour, but there's other videos that could cover the other stuff way better. I'll post a couple of them more in the description. One cool one I'll post below is basically a gentleman who has used the MIDI out, and what you can do is on the mixer, you can take your synth 1, right, and drop the volume all the way down, and same for synth 2. And then if you have use the MIDI out and a splitter, you can set MIDI channel 1 or whatever you set these channels. You can go into the configuration. I didn't get into this tutorial. I'm not gonna, but you can use this as a MIDI controller for other devices. So if you grab, for example, you could grab a Korg Volca FM, and instead of being stuck on the sequencer here, you can build up a big, 8-pattern sequencer using 3 voice whatever from the Novation Circuit into your FM, and use the circuit as the brains to play the FM, and then you can use the scales functionality. You can use the sequencer on here to play external devices via MIDI, the MIDI out, and drawer here. So it doesn't have the traditional MIDI chords. You can see it comes with these, and they're little adapters. So they plug into the back of the circuit via one of these, and then you just plug a regular MIDI cable in, and you can hook this into your device. And if you don't want it to control it, you can sync up. The Vocas work great with it. Sorry, you probably can't hear me because I'm talking in the opposite direction of my microphone. The Vocas work great with it, so even if you don't want to use it as a controller, it can also sync up to keep the clock of the circuit, and also the stop and start button here will trigger the stop and the start on the sequencer on the Volca, so you can quite easily use it as simply as that, or you can use, program something into synth 1, go MIDI out from your circuit into your Volca using channel 1, which is synth 1 is naturally set to, and channel 1 should be the default setting for the Volca FM or the other Volcas, the keys or whatnot. And you can use the sequence in here and the scales option to play out onto your Volca FM or whatnot. So that's one cool thing, and I'll post a video, like I said, below of that. Oh yeah, so it's a great little device. I highly recommend it. I won't get into reviews or anything of that crap right now, but it's good. It's relative. Well, it's not cheap. It's $500 Canadian, so it's not cheap. But for that $500, you get basically 2 synths that can play at the same time, and a sampler. And the sampler can hold up to 64 parts and up to a minute of legs. So it's not a huge amount of memory, but it's good enough for some drum machines and a couple of synth drops that I have on there right now. Yeah. So I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, shoot them down below. I'll try to get to them as I can. And thanks for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good night.